Hi, I'm James Fry. I'm the Regional General Counsel for the Brambles companies in America. Today we're going to be talking about respect in the workplace. I have the privilege of having two esteemed speakers today. The first is Kevin Shaughnessy. He's a partner with the law firm Baker Hostetler. They have been providing guidance to the Brambles companies in the U.S. for well over a decade on a variety of employment matters. I also have the privilege of introducing Dr. John Teedstrom of Teedstrom & Associates. Giving a full introduction to John would take more time than we have today. John has served as an advisor to President Clinton in the White House on a variety of matters relating to Russia and the Ukraine. He has founded and headed NGOs who have worked to fight the global AIDS epidemic. He has been in academia and research, having taught economics and national security policy and directed research for the likes of the RAND Corporation and Columbia University. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our speakers. Kevin?
Thank you, Jay, and thank you all for attending this training program and how we can create a better working environment and create respect in the workplace at Brambles. We're going to cover several topics today, and it's important that at the end of the presentation you have any questions, that you direct your questions to your HR business partner or to the Ask HR website operated by Brambles. We want all your questions resolved so there's a complete understanding of what's expected of you as an employee of Brambles. We're going to cover several topics, as I mentioned. We're going to talk a little bit about where we were in this country 50 years ago and where we are today. We're going to talk about the costs and the cost of discrimination and harassment in the workplace, how it affects both individuals and the company, and it's not all about the money. We're going to talk about the applicable laws and Brambles Code, which goes far beyond what the law requires in the United States. We're also going to talk about leadership and diversity and how we could be more sensitive to LGBTQ issues in the workplace, and John's going to run that part of the presentation. John's also going to go over some ways you can speak up and avoid harassment in the workplace. And finally, Jay will wrap up with what you can do to prevent harassment and how important it is that you follow the company's speaking up policy. So where were we 50 years ago? 50 years ago, the #1 TV show was All in the Family, which had a lot of words in that show that wouldn't be allowed in the workplace today and wouldn't be allowed on TV. There also was the show Saturday Night Live, which had Jane Curtin and Dan Aykroyd going at each other using words that you wouldn't allow in the workplace. We had race riots, we had riots or protests about the Vietnam War, and we had leaders in the community such as Martin Luther King that were advocating for peaceful change in society and equal treatment of all and ensuring that everyone is treated with dignity. So where are we today? The #1 show is Modern Family, where you have mixed race couples, you have a gay couple that's been married, has an adopted minority child, and you have your normal, everyday middle-class family. We have problems in the streets to this day. We have the Black Lives Matter movement. We have a situation in North Carolina where people are not allowed to go to the bathroom of their choosing, and it costs North Carolina the NBA All-Star game. And finally, what's near and dear to my heart is what happened in Orlando, less than 2 miles from my home, where 49 individuals were massacred, in the largest massacre in the history of the United States, simply because they were gay. That's what happened in my community. It was terribly divisive. At the same time, it was terribly unifying. Orlando has come together and realized that gay and lesbians need to be treated with respect and dignity, and we all need to bond together for the betterment of our community. And quite frankly, we've made progress in society, but we need to do much more. And that's why we're here today. We can see from the Black Lives Matter situation and Pulse that we have a ways to go. And in the Brambles workforce, we need to improve. We have a great working environment and great policies, but we're looking to you to make Brambles the greatest place to work and the most productive working environment in our industry. Let me talk about the cost of discrimination and harassment in the workplace. The costs are primarily to the individual and to the coworkers of that individual who's harassed or discriminated against. Someone who's harassed feels demeaned. They have low self-esteem. They don't feel like coming to work. They don't feel they're being treated with dignity and respect. Their performance suffers, and oftentimes they'll leave the workplace. They won't want to advance in their career because it's not a pleasant place to work. It also affects the company because once someone witnesses someone else being discriminated against, they really care about their coworker. They realize they're being mistreated. You have low morale. You have diminished trust in management. And at Brambles, we want you to trust management to do the right thing. And if we're allowing harassment or discrimination to occur, we're not doing the right thing in our workplace. You're going to see a loss of productivity, problems with the team, absenteeism. And one of the most significant things I've observed in doing this for about 30 years is some of your best employees will actually quit and leave without even complaining about the harassment or discrimination. They just don't feel it's worth the effort. And here we want you to make the effort. We don't want to lose those employees and go through all the turnover and the cost of hiring new employees. And also, it's very embarrassing for a company to be faced with a claim of discrimination based on race or sexual orientation or someone's religion. It can affect our business partners and our customers and our vendors. We just don't want to have that happen here at Brambles. And finally, lawyers and experts in cases are very expensive, and those costs can detract from the company's performance and affect the company's ability to function well and meet all of its budget goals. So there's several laws that apply in Brambles' workplace. The federal laws cover many different areas. First is Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Everyone refers to it as Title VII. And it seeks to prevent discrimination in the workplace based on an employee's race, gender, national origin, or religion. In addition, there's the Americans with Disabilities Act that helps disabled people in the workplace, and the Family and Medical Leave Act that helps people when they're ill, or people they care for are ill, or to care for a child, or to adopt a child. Finally, there's a Pregnancy Discrimination Act that covers women who are pregnant in the workplace. And I should also mention the Age Discrimination Act, being someone who's in that protected category of 40 or over. But beyond the federal laws, every state that we operate in has their own civil rights laws, and some counties and cities have civil rights laws similar to Title VII, protecting against discrimination based on race or age or other protected categories. Also, when you have a problem with harassment or discrimination in the workplace, it can lead to several tort claims under state law. For example, there might be an assault or a battery claim. There could be a false imprisonment claim. A hostile work environment might lead to an intentional infliction of emotional distress. Now, I don't think I need to go into the details of all those tort claims, but suffice it to say that in a tort claim, both the company and an individual can be held liable for the tort. I mentioned protected categories or protected classes of individuals. What is a protected class? Well, under the law, it's one thing. At Brambles, it's something far more. And I want to emphasize that to you here today. Let me go through what the federal law protects and what Brambles' Code of Conduct and its handbook protects. Both of those documents protect, or laws, protect race, national origin, age, disability, religion, sex or gender discrimination, and pregnancy discrimination. Under the federal law, it's somewhat ambiguous, or certainly in dispute, as to whether sexual orientation or gender identity is protected by Title VII of the federal law. Some courts say it is, some courts say it's not. The Supreme Court has not yet ruled. No matter what the ambiguity or the dispute might be under federal law, there is no dispute or ambiguity under Brambles' Code. Sexual orientation and gender identity are protected by Brambles' policies and handbook. And I want to make sure that you're clear on that. That's the way it is today, the way the law is in the United States. It doesn't matter what the law is in the United States today or tomorrow. What matters is what Brambles' Code says. And Brambles' Code says we protect based on sexual orientation and gender identity. Brambles' Code also goes on further to protect people based on their marital status and their political affiliation or political opinion. But let me go through the gender orientation and gender identity policies at Brambles. First, from our code of conduct, we exalt diversity. Diversity is empowering the company, and it empowers our employees. So Brambles welcomes people of diverse backgrounds, genders, and characteristics. And the policy specifically states that we encourage diversity, which includes inclusion, recognizing all the differences in background, upbringing, culture, and experience that make each of us unique and distinctive. Doesn't matter where you come from, what your experience has been, we're welcoming you here at Brambles. That code of conduct goes on to specifically say the company does not tolerate discrimination based on an individual's sexual identity. And our handbook, since 2007, has specifically said that Brambles does not tolerate discrimination based on sexual orientation. And again, I want to emphasize that goes beyond what the law requires because we want to be better than the best. Let's talk a little bit about what is and what is not harassment. Harassment is words, gestures, or conducts that are intended to annoy, offend, alarm, or somehow demean an individual because of his or her protected status, whether it's their Muslim religion, their Jewish religion, their race, their national origin, or whether their sexual orientation may be gay or lesbian or bisexual. Again, it has to be based on their protected status. Now, I'm a lawyer, and I hear all kinds of lawyer jokes, but that doesn't mean lawyers, that rises to the level of legal harassment. Why? Because lawyers are not a protected class of people. Sometimes I wish they were. But among this community of employees, if you were a lawyer, you're not protected. If you were an Irish lawyer, like I am, and someone made fun of me because I'm Irish, then they're making fun of me because of my protected category or class, and I would have a potential legal action against the company. One thing about harassment and discrimination, it doesn't have to be intentional. It doesn't have to be intended to offend someone. If two of you are in the break room and you're making gay or lesbian jokes, and a gay or lesbian individual walks outside the break room and hears those jokes, you didn't intend to offend them, but you did. And now they have a potential claim for harassment against the company. What is not harassment? Harassment is not your supervisor changing your schedule. It's not your supervisor asking you to work overtime on a weekend because of a customer's demand or a backlog of pallets that must be repaired and ready for shipment. It's not him changing your schedule to meet another business need or that of one of our vendors or partners. That is not harassment because it's not based on your protected category or class or status as an individual. I also want to spend a little time talking about sexual harassment. Sexual harassment is a type of harassment that is based on a sexual nature, some sexual aspect of an individual's employment. For example, making fun of someone because she's a woman. And here at Brambles, making fun of someone because she's a lesbian. That's a form of sexual harassment or sexual orientation harassment. If you're in a voluntary dating relationship in the work, there can still be harassment there if things deteriorate or you're harassing the person you're having a relationship with. So just because it's voluntary doesn't mean there can't be harassment in the workplace. There are two types of harassment, one of which we don't see very much anymore, and that's called quid pro quo harassment. It's when a supervisor or a manager or your boss tells you to give them a sexual favor if you want to take a day off, you want to get an increase in your wages, or you want to get a promotion. That's something that's, you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back. That's a type of harassment that we don't see much of anymore, but it's out there. The more prevalent one, and the one I'm going to spend some time on today, is hostile work environment. A hostile work environment is when you do something through verbal conduct, visual conduct, or actual physical conduct that creates a hostile work environment. And in this instance, the harasser can be either a supervisor or a coworker. So as you all sit out there today, you could create a hostile work environment for your coworkers. And we're going to go over that in some detail. Let me give you an example of some physical types of harassment. Touching someone inappropriately in their sexual areas or private areas, fondling someone, accidentally brushing up against someone in a sexual manner. Those types of things are physical things. But it can get more serious than that. You could have a physical assault or a sexual assault in the workplace, and that certainly would rise to the level of sexual harassment. Bullying. Bullying is one of the more significant things I see increasing in the workplace nowadays. People are being bullied because they're Muslim, because they're older, because they're gay. And that type of bullying rises to the level of harassment when it's severe and pervasive, and it's something we don't want to tolerate. And I want to stop here for a second. I keep on talking about legal harassment and maybe not legal harassment. We don't want any harassment in the workplace at Brambles. We don't want one joke about a gay individual or one joke about someone's religion. We don't want someone harassed one day because they're African American or they're Hispanic. We don't want any harassment in the workplace. There are other types of harassment, verbal and nonverbal. Obviously, racial slurs are not to be tolerated in the workplace. Off-color sexual jokes, racial jokes are totally inappropriate in the workplace. Referring to someone as doll or honey in a derogatory fashion or even in a kind fashion can create a problem. If you think you're being called something inappropriate, a nickname or an inappropriate name, let your manager know. Go to the speaking up policy, speak to HR. We don't want anyone treated differently or called offensive names. Nor do we want anybody stalking you in the workplace, and we don't want you stalking anyone. If you see that, we want you to report it, or you experience it, report it. And we don't like offensive gestures or clothing. We have told the management team that if they see someone that has offensive clothing or has an offensive tattoo, to take steps to make sure the clothing is removed and the tattoos are covered up because they can offend others in the workplace. I want to clarify as to who could be a victim of harassment and who could be a perpetrator of harassment. And the truth is that everyone sitting here watching this presentation can be either a victim or a perpetrator of harassment. People think that only women are victims of sexual harassment. That's not true. Women can actually be perpetrators of harassment when they harass male employees. People can be harassed based on their national origin, or because of their national origin, they may harass another. For example, Hispanics include Puerto Ricans and Cubans. There is a lot of tension in some areas of this country between Puerto Ricans and Cubans. They can harass someone in the same type of national origin, generally lumped together as Hispanic. Even when someone is in that group, you can harass someone in the same group. Gay people can harass straight people and vice versa. We see a lot of same-sex harassment. That's where a woman harasses another woman employee. And we see a lot of third-party harassment. I really want to focus on that. Third-party harassment is when someone not associated with our company, like an outside vendor or a customer, not a Brambles employee, harasses you. That's actionable and something we want to avoid. In other words, whenever you experience harassment at the hands of anyone, you need to bring it to our attention. So, in sum, you can help us create a better working environment. You can help us be the best we can be when it comes to treating your co-workers and fellow employees with respect and dignity. I'm going to now turn over to John, and John's going to share with you some more details about a very important element of our working environment, the individuals who are part of the LGBTQ community. And John's going to share with you some insights there so we can avoid harassing those individuals. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. And now we're going to take a moment just to take a deeper dive into the kinds of situations that are all too common in the workplace with LGBT people and issues. And as employees of Brambles, it's really important that you're prepared when these situations arise so that you can deal with them properly. And if you don't know what to do, you know where to go. You know to go to your HR business partner or to ask HR, the website. I've been working in this space now for almost 10 years, and my firm helps companies deal with LGBT workplace issues and helps companies deal with their LGBT issues in the communities where they operate. We work with companies like Coca-Cola, the National Basketball Association, in government agencies like the US State Department. As a gay man, these issues and these opportunities are very important to me, and I'm very thankful that you're taking the time and the concern to be with us here today. What we're going to do today is going to learn a little bit about who we are as people, what makes us tick, the many facets of our identity. We're going to talk about what LGBTQ means, what all those different letters stand for, and why they're important. We're going to talk about a little bit about discrimination, bias, and harassment, what to do if you see it happening, and what to do if you feel it happening to you, how to manage relations at work with LGBT employees and coworkers. And then we're going to explore a little bit about this tricky world of microaggressions and unconscious bias. LGBT people can be discriminated against in any number of ways, just like everybody else. Anytime that an LGBT person is not hired or is fired, is not promoted or is demoted or not given a raise, based on his or her sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression, that's discrimination. And if you feel that or if you see that happening to somebody else, it's important that you know what it is and that you know that there are avenues to pursue within Brambles, because Brambles doesn't tolerate that type of behavior in any situation. I think it's important for us to take a step back and to look at who we are and what makes up our identity. And actually, I'd like to start here at the bottom of this ladder and look at the scale that talks about sexual orientation, because that's the one that most people are familiar with, right? So there's the Kinsey scale from the 1960s, you might remember, that puts heterosexualism way to the extreme point of one end of the spectrum, and homosexuality at the other end of the spectrum. Biological sex, that's one that most people are very unfamiliar with. Most of us are very clear about what sex we are biologically, because we have the sex organs of males or females. There are some people in our society, however, for whom that's not the case, and they were born with the sex organs of both genders, and they are called intersex people. Gender expression and gender identity are two very important concepts. Gender identity is how we understand ourselves. I understand myself to be a male or a female, or mostly male or mostly female. Gender expression is how you perceive me. I present a certain personality or identity to the outside world, and people perceive me as either being somewhere closer toward the male side of the spectrum or somewhere closer to the female side, or maybe right in the middle of the spectrum, and that's called androgynous, okay? One of the really fascinating things about these rungs on the identity ladder, as it were, is that no matter where you are on any one of the four scales, it has no bearing whatsoever on where you find yourself on the other three. If I identified myself here as completely homosexual or completely gay, I could have a very feminine gender expression, but to my own mind, I could be 100% male, and my gender identity would be 100% male. Other people could have just the opposite. Why that's important is because we oftentimes make assumptions about people based on their outward expression or how they declare themselves to be, either gay or straight, bisexual, or male, female, or somewhere in between. And we make assumptions about what that means for the other dimensions of their identity, and oftentimes that's not true. If you remember the movie Airplane, when Leslie Nielsen, the late actor, said, "I am serious, and please don't call me Shirley." It's a funny way of talking about the fact that we make assumptions even about people's assumptions, and we can get into trouble that way. And I encourage you to try to avoid those assumptions, certainly as they involve the workplace and your time here at work. Your coworkers who are members of the LGBT community bring a lot to the conversation. They bring a lot of diversity. They bring a lot of history, challenges, and pain as well. From the time that gay people are little boys, little girls, oftentimes they know and they feel discrimination. They know they're different, and they feel that even though they might not have told anybody that they're not straight or that they feel different, they see that society around them is organized in a way that's not for them. We see that gay and lesbian people, transgender and bi people are the targets of hate crimes in the United States, far more than any other group. We can't even estimate the number of LGBT people in the US or around the world, because even here in our society, which is fairly open, people hide. They don't disclose. So when you do a survey, they lie. And either they won't tick off the box that says member of the LGBT community, or they proactively declare that they're a member of the straight community. 40 to 45% of LGBT people in the workforce in the United States today come to work in the closet. So there could be, out of 100 people in the room, some percentage, say 5% of those people, 6% LGBTQ perhaps, and more than a third, maybe as many as half of those people are in the closet. They bring a special amount of stress and anxiety with them that manifests itself in terms of high blood pressure, depression, suicidal tendencies in the extreme. And these are just basic everyday facts that can't be ignored and that can't be brushed under the rug. And it's important that as good coworkers, we're aware of all of these issues. Despite the rapid expansion of rights that our federal government and many states have given to LGBT people in recent years, the coverage of those rights is uneven, and in some places is very skimpy. Regardless of that, at Brambles, as Kevin said, the rights and privileges of gay people are not in question, and they are as equal as they are for every other group of people in the company. Nobody is treated differently at Brambles. Everybody is treated the same. I think that we'd all agree that if we're seeking to have a strong, rich relationship with a coworker or a friend, it's important to have a deeper understanding about that person's community, whether it's about their religion, about their race, in this case, about their sexual identity, their gender expression and identity. Very important to that is using the right language and knowing which words to avoid so that you don't offend someone. An ally is a straight person who is a friend and a supporter of the gay community, actually a cheerleader and a champion, somebody who's going to stand up for gay rights and stand up for gay people. Lesbian, of course, is a woman who is attracted to romantically and sexually to other women. Gay generally refers to gay men who are attracted physically and romantically to other men, but it also is an umbrella term, and you've heard me use it today, as a general kind of loose umbrella term for the entire community. Bisexual it's important. Bisexual people are often very misunderstood. People think that bisexuals are indecisive, they can't make up their mind, or that they like men on odd numbered days and women on even numbered days, and that's not the truth. Nothing could be further from the truth. Bisexual people are just sexually attracted to either gender, and they can be attracted to both genders at the same time. Transgendered people are among the most hidden in today's society. They are coming into their own as a group of people, as a social and a political group. Transgender refers to people who identify with a gender that is not the same as the gender they were assigned at birth. Okay, it's an umbrella term that includes many different types of people or many different ways of practicing or relating to that other gender. A transsexual is very important to kind of single that term out because it's often confused with transgender. And a transsexual is someone who is transgender but feels that disassociation with their birth gender so strongly that they take steps to change their gender permanently and as completely as possible. In particular, they take steps that could include hormone treatment, surgery, etc., to change their gender expression so that it matches their gender identity. Their identity is as a male, their expression was a female. They take these steps in order for their gender expression to align more completely or completely with their gender identity. A cisgendered person is one that, regardless of sexual orientation, their identity is the same as their gender expression. So I was born a male, I present as a male to you. Whether I'm gay or straight makes no difference. Nobody expects you to get everything right all the time. For example, queer. Many people add the Q to the end of LGBT these days. That stands for queer. It's a very controversial word inside of the LGBT community. Many people avoid it. Many organizations that are supporting LGBTQ rights are just now starting to embrace it. Questioning. Many people, especially young people, but not just young people, begin to question their orientation or their gender identity at some point in life. And sometimes you'll see an LGBTQ and then another Q. And that Q refers to questioning. Transition is the process by which a person transitions from male to female in their gender expression. Orientation we discussed. And microaggressions is a very important term of art or category of behavior in language. And it's something that we need to spend a little bit of time on because it's something that is all too common in the workplace and something that you, as Brambles employees, can be aware of and can help minimize in the workplace here. Microaggressions are everyday slights or abuses or affronts and insults that we make without sometimes even intending to hurt someone else's feelings or to cause someone else discomfort or pain. In order to detect them, you have to be really in tune with what's going on, and you have to be an active listener. Okay? Left unchecked, these small microaggressions can balloon. They have a cumulative quality to them, and they can balloon into harassment. They can create, left unchecked, they can explode or overflow into a situation in which a hostile workplace is created. And there's a fine line between microaggressions and bullying or harassment, which can be crossed if the microaggressions aren't caught and nipped in the bud. Here are some examples of microaggressions. If I said to a person of color, hey, we're all equal, I'm cool. When I look at you, I don't see someone who's of a different color than I am. Some people could say, wow, John's a good guy and he's dealt with any racist tendencies that he might have. But other people are saying, whoa, what do you mean? I'm African American, I am different than you are, and by saying that you don't detect or you don't recognize any difference, you're kind of denying my whole existence and the existence of my entire race. And at Brambles and at other companies that are advanced in diversity and inclusion, one of the things that we like to emphasize is that diversity means celebrating the differences among people. It means treating people equally and with respect across the board, but that doesn't mean denying us what makes us special, what makes us different. For example, it wouldn't be right to say, hey, I've got gay friends, and that means that homophobia doesn't bother me. To the contrary, what I would like to hear is that I've got gay friends, and I know that homophobia is a problem. Do you ever want to talk about that? Using he or man as a substitute for everybody, as in all men are created equal in that great document that was signed by all of our founding fathers, it sends a signal to some people that women are invisible and irrelevant. I'm not homophobic, I have gay friends. It sends a signal that, hey, these people don't really understand my reality. Having a meeting like this without a gay person taking part or leading it is another microaggression that signals that these issues aren't important enough to invite a gay person to participate. Asking a lesbian, who's the man in your relationship, is just not good practice. It signals to everybody that lesbian relationships are not valid, that relationships without men, that don't include men, generally are not valid. Asking a trans person, what's your real name? Or where are you in your transition? These are examples of people not appreciating the identity and the values and the priorities of someone as they are and not accepting people for who they are. Now I'm going to turn things back to Jay, who's going to walk us through a situation that is very common and that could easily happen here at Brambles. And thank you very much for your time. Again, if you have any questions, talk to your manager, your HR business partner, or go to Ask HR. Thank you.
Thanks, John. So right now we're going to run through a little hypothetical just to show you how this stuff plays out in real life. Your coworker Mary comes to you and tells you that her supervisor continually tells her off-color jokes, makes sexually suggestive remarks, and shows her pictures from a Victoria's Secret's catalog while asking what she thinks of the outfits. He also says that Mary is not like some of the, quote, dykes who work on the floor. She confides in you that she is very offended by the conduct, but is scared that she will lose her job if she says anything. She also asks you not to tell anyone because she would be very embarrassed. What do you do? This conduct is obviously unacceptable. It goes against everything that we stand for at Brambles, and you have to report it. You can report it to your HR manager or HR field representative, or you can report it through our Speak Up hotline. At Brambles, we're committed to eliminating abusive behavior, whether microaggressions or otherwise. As people leaders, we need you to lead by example. Remember that harassment is best viewed through the eyes of others, and we all have room to improve. If you think you witness a microaggression, address it constructively. Remember, we aren't the thought police. but we all need to be mindful of microaggressions. Lastly, report all instances of suspected harassment or discrimination in the workplace. Your role as an ally is essential. You need to stand up for and recognize the rights and equality of your LGBTQ colleagues. After all, if you face harassment, won't you want them to stand up for you? As you are learning about the Brambles Code of Conduct, you'll see that it includes a speak up policy. You can report concerns to legal, human resources, or directly to the speak up policy. Those concerns can also be reported anonymously. Our speak up policy protects all reports that are made in good faith, and we have a zero retaliation policy. So what can you do to prevent harassment? Always treat your peers and subordinates with courtesy, respect, and dignity. Always think about how others feel before you speak or act. Remember, humor is subjective, and what might be funny to you may be offensive or insulting to others. Always use your own good judgment to avoid engaging in conduct that may be perceived by others as harassment. And lastly, when you see something that feels wrong or looks wrong, do something about it.